And this is kind of to give you an idea of what is going on, whether how to get started, what the process is going to be, what type of things we're going to ask for, the benefits of certification, and I'm going to start the questions off by frequently asked questions that we get all the time and see if there's, then open it up to any questions that you may have to ask. This is a great time if you are brand new to functional safety or certifications to ask any question at all. Let's go ahead and get started. Whenever, especially if you're brand new to functional safety, you don't know much about what's going on, you might know that you or your customers need a SIL. Your customers call you and you say, well, you have this device, that's great, but is it SIL rated? So your next thing, well, I don't even know what a SIL is. I want a SIL, how do I get a SIL? Well, let's take it back a step. Before how do you get it? What is a SIL? Well, a SIL is a safety integrity level. It is defined in the standards, both IEC 61508 and 511. They talk about what a SIL is and all of the different ways to get a SIL, all of the different ways to use a SIL. But a SIL is a rating or a measurement of how well a safety function is doing its job, really. How well that safety function is managing risk. Is it actually removing, how much risk is it removing from the process? So there are 4 different levels, 1 being the lowest, 4 being the highest, and each level is an order of magnitude higher or harder to achieve. In the standards, IEC 61508, it has all of the different requirements to achieve a SIL level, and we'll be talking about all about that all throughout this webinar, really. Now that you know what a SIL is, so there's 4 different levels of a SIL. Great, what does that really mean? Well, if your customers are asking for a device to be SIL rated, it's because they want to use it in one of 4 ways. End users can use IEC 61511 standard and figure out with the SIL rating a risk reduction requirements for their system, the probabilistic limits for random hardware failures, the architectural constraints, and the systematic capability. And all of these are very important to end users to know that they are removing enough risk. If you want more information on any of these 4 ways that the safety integrity levels are used, we have webinars just on this topic, but we don't have enough time to cover all of these and everything going to cover coming up. So we're going to move on to what is product certification and how do you get that SIL requirement. So product certification, there are 3 boundaries, or there are 3 barriers or 3 hurdles that you need to overcome to achieve compliance of IEC 61508. And this is a common misconception when you're new to functional safety. A lot of the times somebody new just say, well, I want a SIL 2 or I want a SIL 3 certificate. They think it's just one thing, a couple of check boxes, and you're done. But that's not what the standard says. The standard says to think of the SIL capability or the SIL rating as a journey, and you need to accomplish or get over each of these hurdles or barriers to finish that race and get your medal. So these barriers, the 3 things are your architectural constraints, your SIL capability, and your probability of failure. Your SIL capability, we're going to talk a lot about coming up in the webinar. That's all about the quality management system, how you make modifications, and to make sure you're not going to introduce any systematic errors through production or design. The next hurdle or barrier that you need to overcome is going to be your probability of failure. For a device, this means knowing your failure rates from your FMEDA, or your failure mode effect and diagnostic analysis. These failure rates will be published on a certificate, so if you are buying a certified product, you'll already have those there. You can just simply read off the back of the certificate or an FMEDA report. The third and final hurdle for a product to get certified is the architectural constraints. That's going to be from the standard, the requirements of Route 1H or Route 2H. And that will talk about either the historical design and prior use historical data quality, or the prior use design quality in your device, or the design quality in the safe failure fraction of the device. And once again, we have blogs and webinars on just these topics. If you want more information on these, we're briefly going to be talking about some of these coming up, but if you want a deeper dive, go back to our website or our YouTube channel to get more information on those. So the common misconception here is that this is a thing that you can cherry pick. You might think that you've done a very good job on your architectural constraints, you've figured out your probability of failure, but you don't have to worry about the systematic capability, right, or that SIL capability. The standard says wrong, absolutely wrong. You are not in compliance with the standard unless you are considering all three of these barriers. This isn't, once again, something you can pick and choose. We need to do all three of these to accomplish compliance with the standard. But the great thing is, if you get your product certified, the certification is covered in all of these. If you are an end user and you are buying certified products, once again, you know that the product you are buying has already been evaluated for all three of these compliance requirements. So how do you even get started? What goes into all of this? Well, IEC 61508 specifies you can do self-certification of all of the standard or all of the requirements in the standard. However, what most people go and choose to do is do a third-party validation. This third-party validation, we always say it's one thing if you say you're great, but it's a whole new ballgame when a third party comes and says that no, that you really are meeting all of the requirements. That third party comes in and says we're independent and they really are that great. That third party assessment is going to look at all of the standards requirements, looking at your detailed analysis of engineering, the processes, the procedures. We're going to determine your systematic capability. We're going to look at cybersecurity if you have software and that's needed. If you're a simple mechanical device, obviously not. We're going to look at detailed strength analysis, hardware designs. We're going to look at design margins, random failure rates, the different failure mode analysis, testing. So how do we start? What happens? Well, I always like to have a first chat. I like to say, first of all, let's get all of your questions out on the table. If you have any questions at all, it's best to ask right away so we both have a clear idea of what's going on. Then I like to discuss the process and any expectations that you may have for the project. If we both know the process, the procedures, anything that I might need, anything that you might need, it's going to go a lot smoother and a lot quicker, I find. Sometimes I do this over the phone, sometimes I do it over email, but next I'll get the information from our application. I could send you the application, or I could just get the information from you. But we're going to ask you questions like, is this one product or multiple product or family? Does this product have internal diagnostics? Is it a new product, or does it have historical data? From that information of the application, we can then determine if we need one or more than one FMEDA to get failure rates, if we can do a proven and use analysis, or if we're going to have to look more into the validation testing if there's no historical data and it's a new product. After this first chat is complete, you know what is expected, I know what you're expecting, and we both know the scope of the certification. I can then provide you a proposal for work. Once it's accepted, we can then schedule a kickoff meeting to talk about what type of documents we're going to need and how to actually get started. Look at the time frame, and like I said, just go ahead and get started. At Exida, we're a little bit different than the conventional certification process. So normally what happens is a certification body starts the process, they kick off, we would review your architecture and say, great, now we need you to to do an FMEA, we need you to do an FMEDA, we need you to build a safety case and show us how you comply with every standard or every requirement of the standard. If necessary, you're going to have to do software criticality, software HAZOP, communication protocol, all of that information. Whenever you're finished with that, you can send us an email or send us all of that. We'll review it. We'll make sure you did everything right. If you didn't, we'll say sorry. You can let us know when you'd like to try again, and we'll review it again. That's that. If you met every requirement, great. We'll issue a certificate and a report. However, we do things a little bit differently. At Exida, we are actually controlled by an advisory board, and the people that make up our advisory board, there are some manufacturers, but it's a lot of end users, and they tell us what's important to them and what they want to see. So we have made up a scheme that takes all of the requirements of the standard and does a little bit more as well. But another thing about our scheme, we do the certification process a little different as well. I think that you're the best at figuring out and designing and testing and all of that for your product, but you might not be as familiar with functional safety standards and the process of how to do a safety case in an FMEDA as someone like me, someone that does that every day, or some of my colleagues that do it every single day. So instead, Exida says, send us your documents, send us this. These are the things we're looking for. And then we'll put together the information. We have experts to do an FMEDA for you. We have experts to do an FMEA. We have experts to do the software analysis and the criticalities, and to make all the safety cases. We will make the requirements. We will make the analysis on how you meet all of the requirements of the standard. Once all of the requirements are met, then we'll go ahead and issue the assessment report and the certificate. So that's a lot of information. It's a big flow chart. What does that actually mean? Well, this is what it means. Once we've done the scope meeting and we've done a kickoff meeting, or we'll do a kickoff meeting, we'll let you know what documents we need. We'll say these are the type of things we're looking for. Once we start getting that information in, we can start the meat and potatoes of it all. We can start and perform your FMEDA, or your failure mode effect and diagnostic analysis. If you think back to the beginning of the webinar and all of the important things for certification from the standard, those 3 hurdles, the 3 barriers, or those 3 circles, the FMEDA will give you the failure rates for that probability of failure circle. So that's one of the check marks. Okay, great. We can get over that hurdle. Next, if you have historical data on a product, we will create a proven in use analysis. We'll look at the shipments, returns, all how you analyze things that come back, and compare those results to the FMEDAs and the failure rates. If your product is new and you don't have historical data, that's okay too. We won't do the proven in use analysis, but in the next step, when we're doing the process analysis and the safety case, we will further evaluate and dive deeper into verification and validation process and test results and all of that. So to get and further explain the process analysis, remember how I told you the standard IEC 61508 has a ton of requirements? Well, each safety integrity level has more requirements to meet. So if you're trying to achieve product certification of SIL 1, the standard lists a bunch of requirements for you. If you want to meet SIL 2, you have to meet all of the SIL 1 requirements, then all of the SIL 2. Same with SIL 3 and so on. The safety case and the process analysis is how you show you meet those requirements. The safety case is our tool, how we organize it all and show that this requirement is met this way. And we'll go through each one of them for whichever SIL you're trying to achieve. While we are doing that, we will also perform an on-site audit. Somebody from Exida will come to your facility, and we will try and close any portions of the process analysis or that safety case that we have not found yet. We will say, oh, we haven't really dug into your modifications. Can you show me this, you gave me this documentation, but I can't really find this requirement. And we will go through on site and fill any gaps or anything that might be missing from the requirements while we're on site. After, we'll also do like a tour of your facility, say hi to a few people, that fun stuff. But while we were there, we'll mostly be working on that process analysis, showing all of the ways you meet all of the requirements of the standard. If there are any gaps or anything missing after the on-site, we'll then issue an action item list for you to really help you understand where you are. If there are any gaps in action items, once again, we're not just going to say you have issues, you didn't pass, sorry. No, we're going to help you understand. That's why we do these free webinars. That's why we have blogs. We want to really teach you functional safety so you can actually apply it in the right things, because if you apply functional safety correctly, you can actually be making a difference and making the world safer. At the end, after each requirement is met and all the gaps are closed, any action items are closed, the process analysis or the safety case is completed, and it's handed off to a second assessor here at Exida. That second assessor is somebody completely independent and new. They don't know anything about the project. They go through the safety case. They double check things. They make sure that they agree with the first assessor. If they do, then congratulations, you have completed your certification and you get your certificate and an assessment report. So how do you do this? What are the different options? Well, there are 3 main options to achieving certification here at Exida. The first one is a design and test process is fully compliant. That means we go through everything. The second one would be a still fully compliant design process, but you have historical product. This means you have something out in the field for a little bit, you have history, you have shipments, you have some returns, you have some analysis. We can use that in lieu of some of those verification and validation. And then finally, we have a certification with no changes allowed. Each of these certification options, there are different requirements, there's different documents that we're going to assess, and just like everything in life, each of these certifications has pros and cons to each of them. So let's quickly investigate each of these. That first one, that design and test process is fully compliant. This is great if you have a new design and you don't have any field history. For this, first of all, your new design has to be have a full hardware failure analysis done. What was that hardware analysis? That is your FMEDA, your failure mode effect and diagnostic analysis. That's going to give you your failure rates. That's going to cover that random integrity or that circle for that probability of failure. The next portion of this certificate, you also need to have your design follow the rules and the requirements of IEC 61508 for whichever SIL level you're trying to achieve. So if you're trying to achieve SIL 1, you have all of the SIL 1 requirements, SIL 2, SIL 1 and 2 requirements, and SIL 3, you're going to have to do all the SIL 1, all the SIL 2, and the SIL 3 requirements. That's going to ensure that you aren't going to introduce any systematic failures to your product. That's going to be that systematic or that SIL capability circle at the top of the 3 circles or that one barrier. And then finally, we have your safety manual has to be created to explain to your customers all of the great information you have. This is going to be how you communicate your SIL, how you communicate how to proof test, how you communicate your all of your information that they're going to be using in their calculations will go in the safety manual. Sorry about that. Will go into the safety manual. So that's once again going to cover those systematic failures. So if you remember back that flow chart I showed you before, that was the new product design flow chart. That's for everything included. Same process we talked about earlier. You're going to show us your process, show us your procedures, your documentation, and we're going to do the work for you and give you out reports and certificates. The second option is once again going to be fully compliant. However, this time you have some historical data. However, something to note, that historical data has to have well-documented field history. This can't just be that you're shipping things and that's good enough. No, you need to keep track of things. You need to know the returns, all of that information. So this is great if you have a fully compliant design process and maybe a product that has maybe 3 or 5 years at least history. This option is going to rely more on your proven in use assessment. And because of that, we don't need to rely as heavily on verification or validation documents. This is great if you have an older product that really hasn't changed much in the past so many years. Example, valves. Some valves really haven't changed in the last 5–10 years. And you may have a great record-keeping system, and you might have the ability to take away some of those, a few of those requirements. The same as the first option, you still need a full hardware analysis, a full FMEDA on the product that covers those random failures or that one barrier for the probability of failure. We're still going to analyze your processes and procedures, but slightly different. This time, instead of going through everything, we're going to look at how you do data field collection, how you do modifications, all of your quality management processes, leaving out some verification, validation, testing. That's going to once again cover your systematic failures or those SIL capability barrier. And then finally, just like in option 1, you still need to be able to communicate all of this wonderful information to your customers, and you have to do so through a safety manual. So if you think about the flow chart from option 1, if you have that historical data, there are documents and reports and analysis that we can kind of eliminate. This could make your life easier if you don't have that information. This could speed up the process sometimes. The third certification process option is if you have a product with well-documented field history, however, this time there's no changes allowed. So everything is going to be the same as option 2. You're still going to have an FMEDA. You're still going to look at the product field failure data collection. However, this time, instead of looking at how your modifications are done, if you're doing an impact analysis, ECNs, all of that, we just simply say, we're not going to worry about modifications, don't touch the product. And then finally, you still have the safety manual because you still need to communicate to your customers all of this information. This option is typically done when a product has a long history and well-kept return data. This option relies, once again, on that proven in use assessment, just like option 2. But this time, those modifications cannot be made. If you do make a modification to a product, you need to come back to us and we need to look over the modification and reassess it. This option can be helpful if you have an older product, you're not making any changes to, you might not even have those test records in the past, and maybe you don't have the greatest modification systems. Maybe you wouldn't meet all of the requirements of the standard. There are times where we've had customers bring us a product and they get certified per this option because they knew their modifications system wasn't going to meet the requirements quite yet. However, we helped them get their modification requirement or process up to the requirements of the standard, and when they recertified their product, we did it per option 2 instead of option 3 when recertification came around. So this is always an option you can do if you don't have those test reports and records, if you don't have the best modification, or if you simply just need to do something quickly, we can get it done this way. So thinking back to the flow chart, once again, this is going to take out some of those processes and requirements, but this is mostly going to take out a lot of things that you have to provide us, those documentation and the processes. So think back to those circles and how we are relating that. At the end of those option 1, 2, or 3, you're going to receive your product certification. Once all of the requirements of the standard have been met and everything has been completed, a certificate will be issued. The certificate is going to show that you met all of those requirements of the standard. It's going to show that you've met your SIL capability through the safety case. It's going to show that you've met your probability of failure through the FMEDA and your architectural constraints listed on the certificate as well. On the back of the certificate, it's going to list failure rates and the safety manual title. So your customer has all of the information they need quickly on the certificate, and if they want more information, they can just ask you for the reports. Okay, so that's a lot. How is this done? If you go back and remember those steps that we talked about, we went over the scope in the kickoff meeting. The next one is to really perform an FMEDA. We talked briefly about this, but that FMEDA is that failure mode effect and diagnostic analysis. It is an analysis that enables you to predict the failure rate, the failure mode, and the diagnostic coverage for a product. The great thing about FMEDAs are they are done for a specific manufacturer for a specific product, down to the specific environment, the specific application, if it's clean or dirty service. All of those variables go into FMEDAs. And the end result, as I said, are failure rates. Those failure rates go into SIL verifications, they go into probability of failure on demand calculations, lots of very important things for your customers, along with the product failure mode and the diagnostic coverage. After the FMEDA is done, you have your failure rates. We start the process analysis, or that safety case. The safety case we mentioned briefly already, but it's to show that you're meeting all of the requirements of the standard. It's to prove that justification that your system or that your product is safe. It's going to store your documents as evidence for each requirement and show justification and reasons why. So this is just one example. As I said, each safety integrity level of the standard has more and more requirements, and for each requirement, we list out exactly where in the standard it says, what it says, and then list an argument on why we believe your product or your processes and your company meet these requirements. So for example, in part 3, it talks about safety requirement and verification. It needs to check the SRF, the safety system requirements, and validation planning. Excuse me. So we will then look in your documentation to see if you have any processes or documents showing all of these. If you do, we will say that yes, the SRS was checked, it was peer reviewed. In this document, in this section, we agree. And we will do that for every requirement needed for you to achieve your safety integrity level. So this is kind of a breakdown of the same thing I just said, but for each requirement, we will make an argument why we feel you achieve that. We will then list evidence, your evidence, for why you achieve it, along with exactly where we found it. Once all of the requirements are completed, if there are any gaps, we will send out an audit list or an action item list and help you understand where the gaps are, what requirements aren't met and how you can meet those. If you meet all the requirements, the safety case is then handed over to that second assessor. Once that second assessor evaluates it, congratulations, your product is certified. But once again, this safety case has a lot of the arguments on why you will achieve your certification. Some typical documents we ask for or we look for. This is a list. We will ask for things like your ISO cert, your training procedures. We will ask for an FMEDA and a safety manual, product brochure, how you do your modifications if you choose that route of certification. These are just some typical documents we ask for. The great thing about the standard is they don't care if it's named the same thing. They don't care where this information is located, just as long as you have this information available. It can be in one document you call something totally different, or it can be in multiple documents you piece together for one requirement. It doesn't matter as long as you have the requirements documented somewhere. So now when you see that safety SIL rating and that stamp, now you know that there's a lot more that goes into that rather than just a checklist and you're done. Think about the FMEDA, the on-site audit, the safety case, if you're doing a proven use, and the safety manual, all go into your SIL rating. All of those things are going to say if you meet a SIL requirement or not. At the end of the job, at the end of the project, as I said, your end result is going to be a certificate. The certificate is going to have all of the information your end users need. It's going to show all that you hurdled all three of the barriers. It's going to give them information for your SIL capability, the failure rates, and your architecture. All just on that, and more information than our reports if you want it. The great thing about third-party certification, as we said before, it's one thing to say that, no, I think I know the standard well enough, and I think that I meet all the requirements. Now, this is a full independent team that has nothing to do with you, saying that, no, you're really doing a good job. Your product is really safe. The great thing about certification is the product recognition. You cannot believe how many end users we have that come to us and say, if it doesn't have that safety stamp on it, we will not accept it, we will not use it, we will not buy it, we don't care. And the wonderful thing is that especially realistic failure rates have that market recognition. With the Exida certification, you are also incorporated on the SAEL. The SAEL is the Safety Automation Element List, and this lists all the certificates, and it's kind of a database for end users. I know a lot of people that use that, and if they're starting to design their SIF, they'll just go to that and Google, or on the SAEL search, I need a ball valve, a floating ball valve, SIL 3, and they can pull up the certificates. All of the manufacturers and models that are going to achieve that SIL 3 rating. They can look at the certificate and know that they achieved the barriers, turn it over, and get the failure rates. Really easy. You also, with product certification, are going to be included on the Excellentia database. If you are familiar with Excellentia, you will know how important that is. If you're not, you should be. Excellentia is the tool that most end users use to do their SIL verifications, their PHAs, their HACCPs, all of that information they use. When they're doing their SIL verification calculations, remember I said they need your failure rates from your certificate? If you already have an Exida certificate, you're in our tool. They can simply search SIL3 ball valves and import your information directly into their calculations. How easy is that? And then finally, it's going to help you reduce field failures. Once you have all of the requirements in place from IEC 61508, if you're following your process and procedures, that's a big key. If you're following them, you're going to see your number of field failures reduce. You're going to have that lower number because those systematic and the random, or those systematic failures are not going to be creeping in to your process as much. So now I'm going to take some time to answer some questions, and I'm going to start it off with asking some questions that we always get asked to kind of get you talking. So first of all, we always get asked, well, how much of my time does it take to get certified? You know, we're really busy. We don't have a lot of engineering man hours to put to this project. It's not something that we can afford to do right now. We totally get that. Because remember that flow chart I showed you that we do most of the work, you just send us stuff. Of course, we're going to need you to answer emails, answer questions, send us documents, but we're going to be doing all of the analysis and the reports. We try and take the burden and off the manufacturer and put it on us. Once again, it's something that we do every day. We don't have to go and re-look up the standard or re-look up how to do things, so we can do it quicker for you. We once had a company tell us that, you know, well, the first time we did it with we certified our product with a different certification company, and it took us over 600 man hours to complete this certification, and it was brutal. When our sister company went through the process, they used you, Exida, and they only billed 60 hours of man time. That was a big difference for them. So you're still going to have some time and some requirements, however, a lot less. The next question we often get is, why does Exida certificate have an expiration when others don't, and how long is it good for? Well, first of all, the certificates at Exida are usually good for 3 years. There are a few exceptions to the rules, as always, but remember how I said we have an advisory board? Well, that's something that came from our advisory board. And users said, well, at that 3 years, there could be changes in the procedures, changes in the product itself, changes in documentation, changes in manufacturing locations that you're not aware of. A lot of things change. Companies can be bought out. So we want to go back, make sure that they're still doing the things that you say you're doing, making sure there aren't any changes, and that you don't have any other questions. We come and do a surveillance audit, and usually they can go pretty quick and easy as long as you're still following the same things. The next question, well, who says Exida can really do what you're doing? If you're going to read that question bluntly. Well, the IAF, so all certification bodies, well, sorry, I should not have said that. Certification bodies should be governed by the accreditation body of International Accreditation Forum. That's IAF. The accreditation body in the United States is called ANSI, and we are accredited by ANSI. We get audited multiple times per year for long audits to make sure that we are doing what we're supposed to be doing, asking the right things, and doing our job correctly. So whenever you see a certificate and a certification body, always make sure that they are being audited themselves. The next question we get often is, can I certify a brand new product, or does it have to be an old product, or can it be an old product? What can I do? I think I answered this earlier. However, You can certify new products, you can certify old products, you can certify ancient products, you can even certify processes, software, people, all sorts of things. But for IEC 61508, it doesn't matter if it's new or old. There's a way to certify you, just depends on what documents we look at. The next question we get is, can I certify a whole family of products, or is this something I can just certify one specific? We do families all the time. We can look at a full family of products and have a certificate for the whole family. And then finally, how can I get more information? Well, if you're here, you already know about our free webinars. You can get on our mailing list to get the most up-to-date webinars sent to you. We have free blogs, free white papers, we have books, and if you want more information on certifications, just call. Call me, email me, come to our website. We're really nice people. We don't bite. We'll just have that first chat to answer all of your questions. You're not signing up for something or demanding you have to do anything. We'll go over the certification process, and yeah. So now I'm going to go ahead and take some questions. If you think of questions, there aren't very many. If you think of questions later, please feel free to email me. And if you want more information on training and you love functional safety and want more, you can't get enough to it, come to our training in our classes. We have some in person, we have some online that you can self-pace, or if you wanted more information, come visit us. The question we have right now is, give an example for a family of products. Absolutely. I just worked on a family of valves, and this was a specific ball valve, but it was the whole family of floating ball valves. It had different, I think it had 6 different sizes, 6 different pressure classes, and we were able to analyze all of those. We can analyze them for clean service or severe service. We can analyze for open on trip, closed on trip, tight shut off. The next question we have, if we physically test the products for families. It depends on what type of certification you're going for. But for IEC 61508, we do not. We will do the FMEDA analysis by looking at a drawing and a BOM, and we will look at your validation and verification test plans and reports. If we do not do the physical testing for IEC 61508. If you think of any other questions, feel free to reach out to us. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great day.